Good afternoon. Welcome to the Analyst. Today we'll be taking up 5 newspaper articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express and discussing them. The handout for the same will be available in the description of this video for your kind perusal. Please have a look at that. The first article that we'll be taking up is related to the aviation sector, as major airports in India have been witnessing severe flight disruptions owing to bad weather conditions, and therefore questions are being raised regarding the existing instrument lending system. The second article is related to the three-stage nuclear program. The third article is related to plastic pollution, as rapid and unplanned urbanization has been causing a plastic waste crisis in the Himalayan region. The fourth article is related to dam safety, as piers at a barrage of the Kaleshwaram lift irrigation project have been sinking. And the final article is related to White Revolution 2.0. Now, the first article is related to the aviation sector. The context behind it is that major airports across India have witnessed severe flight disruptions owing to bad weather conditions. Therefore, questions are being raised regarding the existing instrument lending system. So, we will be discussing the aviation sector as a whole, the challenges associated with it, as well as a few government initiatives to promote aviation in India. This is important under the topic Infrastructure Airports in GS3. Now first let's discuss the significance of aviation sector in India. As per the International Air Transport Association, the market size of aviation sector in India is going to grow. It is going to surpass even that of USA and China by 2030. Also, it will help in improving connectivity as well as economic growth. Connectivity to the hinterland, to the far-flung areas, to northeast, etc., and contributing to economic growth as well. It will provide a boost to the tourism industry, as the aviation sector acts like a growth pole, and therefore it has a positive spillover effect on other industries related, for example tourism, and it will help in employment generation as well. As per some estimates, it will provide employment to 10,000 additional pilots, which will be the requirement in India by 2030, and it may help in attracting more FDI in India, foreign direct investment. It has already attracted FDI of about $3 billion in India in the form of Jawar Airport near Noida, Navi Mumbai, etc. Plus, it will provide a boost to the manufacturing sector, because the government is going to promote the maintenance, repair, overhaul operations in the aviation sector in India. Now, because of the significance of aviation sector, the government came up with a comprehensive policy to promote civil aviation in India in 2016, the National Civil Aviation Policy. Earlier, what used to happen was, for any domestic airline to participate in the international flying operations, it had to have an experience of 5 years. 5 years of flying in the domestic sector before it could be allowed to fly internationally. This condition was done away with by the National Civil Aviation Policy 2016. Now any domestic airline can also fly internationally. It can also conduct international operations, provided it has a fleet of at least 20 aircraft, or it can deploy at least 20 of its aircrafts, that is 20% of its aircrafts in the domestic sector, then it can fly internationally also. Also, one subpart of the policy was regional connectivity scheme. As a part of the regional connectivity scheme, there was a fare cap which was imposed, that is, the flights, domestic flights which had an operation of less than 1 hour, etc., there the maximum fare that could be charged was capped at 2,500 rupees, plus some no-frills airports were also to be operated under the regional connectivity scheme, that is 50 to 80 airports where there were lower levies and more concessions, etc. Plus, as part of the policy, there was the open skies policy which India came up with, open skies policy for the SAARC region and the countries beyond 5,000 kilometers from Delhi. That is, unlimited number of flights could be operated to and from that country as part of the open skies policy. So this National Civil Aviation Policy 2016 was to promote the aviation industry in India and promote the status of India internationally. Now, there are certain challenges affecting the aviation sector in India. What are those? One, the aviation sector, there is a duopoly which is emerging now. That is, about 60% of the aircraft operations are by Indigo and 20% of them is with the Tata Group, and remaining 20% is with the rest of the airlines combined. So it will lead to lesser competition in the aviation sector in India, which may harm the consumer interests or the flyer interests who will have limited options. Plus, there are financial losses which are reported by various airlines. For example, we have seen the recent case of the insolvency of Go First. There are inflated projections, inflated financial numbers which are projected by the airlines, and earlier we had seen the financial crunch of Kingfisher Airlines, Jet Airways, etc. Plus the number of grounded aircraft that is high in India. Grounded because they have been termed unsafe. About 160 aircrafts are grounded, that is about a quarter of fleet of the Indian airlines is grounded, and the maximum affected is usually SpiceJet. And the original equipment manufacturers, they are also facing supply chain disruptions. That is, the airlines, they are not able to purchase the aircrafts quickly, there are delays, plus there are operational issues which are plaguing the sector. Operational issues, for example, the shortage of crew, and the turnaround time in India for the airlines is higher because of again delays due to crew also and the shortage of crew. And the per capita penetration in terms of the aviation availability and the accessibility, that is lower in India. It is about 1/4 of countries like Brazil, China, etc. Plus there are policy barriers in the aviation sector. What kind of policy barriers? That is in terms of entry barriers, plus the taxes that are imposed on the aviation turbine fuel, which causes higher cost of the aviation turbine fuel in India, and therefore the airlines run into losses because they can't charge a premium from the customers, also from the flyers. Plus, the rural connectivity has not really taken off. Despite the Udan scheme, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagarik, still the number of flights to the tier 2, tier 3 cities in India, that is still low, and there is an environmental impact also which they have to consider, because organizations like Corsia, they are usually after the airlines, forcing them to offset the carbon footprint that they cause, because flying also uses fossil fuels. Now, what are some government initiatives as well as a few suggestions to promote the aviation sector? One, we talked about the National Civil Aviation Policy 2016. Then there is the Udan scheme. Udan scheme is to provide access to the tier 2, tier 3 cities to promote more number of flights towards the hinterland and towards the smaller cities, but it has not really taken off. And the open sky policy. Open sky policy is to liberalize the aviation sector, to promote the private participation also, and also the participation of private players in the operation of the airports, as well as to ensure unlimited number of flights with various countries. There are open sky air service agreements. Air service agreements we have with various countries including USA, etc. Plus, to promote the aviation sector, more FDI is allowed. Now up to 100% FDI is allowed under automatic route for the greenfield projects, and up to 74% FDI is allowed under the automatic route for the brownfield projects related to the airports. Plus there are tax concessions also which are provided by the government. That is, the players who are involved in the maintenance, repair and overhauling in the aviation sector, they do not have to pay any custom duty on the parts that they have to import for the conducting of maintenance, repair and overhauling operations. There are no custom duties. Plus there are full tax exemptions on new airport projects for up to the first 10 years of their operations. And India has Aircraft Act 1934 and Aircraft Rules 1937. Recently, there were amendments which were done by the government in the Aircraft Rules 1937. This was in the form of licensing. That is, earlier the commercial pilot license that had to be renewed every 5 years. Now it is valid for up to 10 years. There won't be as many frequent renewals. Plus, the lights near the aerodromes which are there, they can be controlled by the government. That is to promote aviation safety. The lights, they can affect the aviation safety, landing, takeoff, etc. They can be regulated, and the government can take action also against people if they are lighting near the aerodromes. That is the area of the airport near where the aircrafts are operating, landing and taking off. Plus, you can suggest for reforms in the DGCA. It has been discussed earlier also, and we can promote the Startup India initiative, particularly related to the aviation sector in India, to promote its growth. Now, the next article is related to the three-stage nuclear program of India. The context behind it is that Prime Minister Modi is going to witness the initiation of core loading of the prototype fast breeder reactor in the nuclear complex at Kalpakkam. This is important in GS3 under the topic Infrastructure Energy. Before coming on to the three-stage nuclear program of India, let's understand how nuclear power produces electricity. How is nuclear fission used to produce electricity? Usually in a nuclear power plant, the nuclear fission produces heat. That is, there is a nuclear reactor inside which there is nuclear fission happening, which is controlled through some control rods, and this fission reaction produces heat. Now this heat is used to heat water, and it is used to convert water into steam. That steam drives a turbine, and this turbine drives an electric generator which finally produces electricity. So essentially it is the heat that is used from the nuclear fission reaction in a nuclear power plant to convert water into steam, and finally that steam is used to drive turbines and generators to generate electricity. Now, why did India plan for a three-stage nuclear program in India? Because we have vast thorium reserves and we wanted to utilize it. At the time of independence and even today, we were dependent upon the imports for the oil and gas. And to ensure energy security of India, to ensure energy sovereignty as well as national security, we wanted to become independent in terms of energy. Therefore, we wanted to utilize the vast thorium reserves. Now, why can't we simply use thorium as a fuel for the nuclear reactors? Why three stages? Because thorium is not a fissile material. For this, we have to understand the fissile materials and fertile materials. Fissile materials are those nuclear elements which, if bombarded with low energy neutrons, they can be easily split. Thus, a fission reaction may be triggered which will be used to produce heat and finally to generate power plant electricity in a power plant. Usually the fissile materials are uranium-233, uranium-238 and plutonium-239. But out of these, the naturally occurring is only uranium-238. Whereas the fertile elements are those which are not directly fissionable, but they can be converted into fissile materials through the irradiating of neutrons upon them. And thus the fertile materials like thorium, thorium-238, 232, they can be converted into fertile materials. For this, utilizing of thorium to produce electricity, India conceptualized a three-stage nuclear power program. Now, how does it work? In the first stage, there will be pressurized heavy water reactors. Why heavy water reactors? We could have used light water reactors also. But to operate light water reactors, enriched uranium will be needed. But we had a good reactor design for the heavy water reactors. Therefore, choosing to go with the pressurized heavy water reactors at that time was a wise decision. And it will be using natural uranium and producing some electricity, and the byproducts will be some plutonium and depleted uranium, both of which will be used as inputs into the second stage, which we are going to operationalize. In the second stage, the depleted uranium and plutonium will be used to produce electricity, and it will also produce uranium-233, that is the enriched uranium. We call it the fast breeder reactor because it produces more plutonium than it consumes. Therefore, once there are sufficient reserves of plutonium built, Then there will be thorium, which can be used in the second stage also. And in the third stage, the uranium-233, which will be produced by the second stage, will be used as input, and this will be also using thorium and producing electricity. And thus the reserves of thorium that India possesses, that is about 25% of the world's thorium reserves are there in India, that will be finally utilized, and it will become a complete cycle to generate electricity. Now, there are certain challenges in this three-stage nuclear program of India. One, there will be concerns related to the safety and waste management, because we have witnessed earlier that there will be radiation leaks, for example in the form of Chernobyl, Fukushima disasters, etc. Therefore, there are always apprehensions, and some countries have been now shutting down nuclear power plants because of the radiation leak fears. Plus, the fissile material availability in India is less. For this, we will have to utilize diplomacy, and there will be concerns related to NPT and NSG, because India is not a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty or a nuclear suppliers group member. But this problem has been overcome because India got a waiver from NSG in 2009, and post that waiver, we had bilateral agreements with various countries for the supply of civil nuclear energy. Plus, there will be challenges related to land acquisition, because there will be protests as were observed near the Kudankulam power plant, also near Mithivardi in Gujarat, because people are afraid that it will lead to radiation leaks causing health damage. Plus, the enrichment capacity of India to produce more enriched uranium will have to be improved, and India also has to utilize the spent fuel also, that is the byproducts, and it may cause the cost overruns. For example, what happened in South Carolina in USA, the power plant idea itself was dropped after an investment, a huge investment of $9 billion, because of huge cost overruns. And there are cheap alternatives also, because the solar and wind power that is available at the rate of 2 to 4 rupees per unit electricity, whereas as per the estimates of the Department of Atomic Energy, the cost of nuclear power is going to be many times. The Department of Atomic Energy estimated that the cost of nuclear energy from the Jaitapur nuclear power plant will be about 9 rupees, whereas from Mithivardi in Gujarat power plant it will be about 12 rupees. So what can we suggest for it? One, we can suggest that the proportion of the solar and wind energy in India's energy mix can actually be promoted, it can be increased, and rather than relying only on the nuclear fission technology, we can conduct more research and promote fusion technology also, because there will be lesser chances of leaks as well as the safety issues, because there the waste and byproducts are lesser, and plus more safety measures and awareness have to be built. To utilize the nuclear power plants which are based upon the fission technologies, more stringent safety measures have to be adopted and awareness has to be promoted among the people. Now coming on to the next article, it is related to the plastic pollution. The context behind it is that rapid and unplanned urbanization and changing production and consumption patterns have been causing a plastic waste crisis in the Himalayan region in particular. It has been choking the Himalayan states. So we will be discussing the plastic pollution, its impacts, as well as a few government steps, etc. This is important in the paper GS3 under the topic Conservation, Environmental Pollution and Degradation. Let's first discuss the magnitude of plastic pollution in India. As per the UN reports, only about 9% of plastic waste has been recycled ever, and the rest of it is just cast off. It leaches into water, through groundwater, through river water, ends up in oceans, etc., thus polluting that too. As per the World Bank, about 8 million tons of plastic waste enters sea annually. And by 2050, we might have more plastic in the seas than the fish even. And in the Pacific Ocean, there is a great Pacific garbage patch which has come up. It's a lifeless zone where there is no marine organisms, no marine life, just a garbage of plastic. As per the CPCB report, the Central Pollution Control Board, a report was released in 2018-19. It observed that in India, about 3 million tons of plastic waste is produced annually. That is a huge number, but still, if we compare it per capita to USA, we are producing 1/10 of the plastic waste that USA produces per capita. Now let's discuss the dangers related to the plastic pollution also. It has adverse impact in various sectors. One related to environment, it has an adverse impact on various species. The species including marine species and the species on land, because they will be consuming plastic and dying, and it will cause global warming as well, because plastic is derived from fossil fuels and its refinement also uses energy, which again causes greenhouse gas emissions, ultimately leading to global warming. Plus, it will adversely affect soil. There will be plastic pollution and the water quality as well. And it will be causing flooding also indirectly, because the drains are choked by various plastic bags, etc. And therefore, it causes flooding. It has an adverse impact on health also, because the plastics, they are ingested and it causes plastic pollution. Intestines are blocked, which causes further health complications, and the microplastics, that is the plastics which are less than 5 micrometer in size, they are even more easier to ingest, further leading to health complications. It has adverse impact on economy in general, because it will lead to more health expenditure, and also it will be adversely affecting the tourism industry. When there is more plastic pollution, the tourists are dissuaded from visiting those spots. Now, what has the government done to control the plastic pollution? One, it came up with the plastic waste management rules in 2016. They were amended recently in 2021 also. What do the rules say? Philosophically looking, they provide for polluter pays principle and the extended producer responsibility. Extended producer responsibility means that the plastic generators, the manufacturers, they will also have the responsibility to collect that plastic waste and process and recycle it. Otherwise, they will be facing fines, penalties, that is, fines will be levied upon them. And the polluter pays principle prescribes that the person who pollutes, he will have to pay for it. The waste management rules, they banned the single-use plastic totally. The recent amendment has done that. And the waste also has to be segregated. The responsibility of segregation lies upon the waste generator, and the rules provide for the use of the waste plastic in road construction through grams, Sadak Yojana, etc. And the vendors who are giving plastic, they will have to be registered with the municipal corporations. Plus, the thickness of plastic bags that are allowed to be sold, that has been increased recently. That is, earlier even 50 micron plastic bags could be sold. Now the minimum thickness has been increased to 120 microns. That is essentially to ensure that the cost of producing the plastic bags increases and people are dissuaded from giving plastic bags for free or getting plastic bags. Plus, the government has provided for various nudge mechanisms, the behavioral change mechanisms, in the form of Swachh Bharat Mission. There is a clean and green initiative of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, which dissuades the use of plastic. Plus, the government has collaborated with various players. There are collaborative efforts, collaboration with the private players as well as collaborations internationally. There is an international initiative also to control plastic pollution. Now, how can we control plastic pollution? A few suggestions also. We can recommend a few best practices. For example, France banned the use of disposable single-use plastic, including cutlery, etc., so that people don't use it. China also came up with a similar initiative long time back, that they made it illegal for the vendors to give plastic bags for free. And we can promote a network of collection and recycling, because unless there is collection, the recycling will be impossible. And the extended producer responsibility, that can be implemented effectively if there are targets which are given to the producers or there is collective implementation. For example, in Europe, what happens is the plastic waste generators, they have set up some producer responsibility organizations also. These producer responsibility organizations, they are responsible for the collection of the plastic waste that they are generating, and we can promote the biodegradable alternatives to plastic, but they also have to be affordable. Unless they are affordable, people are going to use the cheap plastic bags only. And we can promote a kind of a circular economy. For example, in Canada, what happens, a Canadian company collects plastic waste, and in return you can get anything, even maybe medical insurance or fossil fuels, etc. And awareness has to be spread among the people not to use plastic. For example, what happens in Kannur, the district administration in Kannur came up with a no plastic use initiative also. Now coming on to the next article, it is related to dam safety. The context behind it is that piers are sinking at a barrage of the Kaleshwaram lift irrigation project. So we will be discussing the dam safety issue as a whole. This is important in the paper GS3 under the topic disaster as well as environmental conservation. Now, what's the significance of this topic, dam safety? In India, there have been various cases of dam failures. For example, recently there was a glacial lake outburst flood in Sikkim. Now that flood literally destroyed the dam on the Teesta river, and India has a large number of dams. More than 6,000 large dams are there in India. This number is the third highest in the world, and we generate hydropower also using dams. About 25 gigawatt of power is generated by building large dams on the Himalayan rivers. That is, we are utilizing 2/3 of the potential of hydropower generation from the Himalayan rivers. And there have been a lot of dam failures also. As per the National Dam Safety Authority, there have been about 42 significant dam failures in India, and the dams also sometimes induce floods. There have been incidents, for example, the Hirakund Dam has induced floods in the Mahanadi basin in the past. Now, what are the challenges related to the dam safety? One, there are aging dams in India. As per the Ministry of Jal Shakti, usually the dams are designed so that they are having a useful life of about 100 years. For that much operation time, they won't be failing. But 80% of dams in India are already more than 25 years old, and about 234 dams in India are already more than 100 years old already. And there is an issue that the old dams are not decommissioned. There are challenges related to that also, because there are socio-economic concerns too, that usually communities come up near the dams. For example, the communities or colonies near the Mulla Periyar Dam in Kerala, and it becomes difficult later on to rehabilitate them and to change the entire ecosystem. And the ecological impact studies also have to be conducted by the experts, which are not done. And there are unscientific operations which are done, and they are not considering the dam safety. For example, the seismicity is not considered while operating the dam. That is, whether it is in the earthquake prone zone, how much seismicity levels are there in that region. And also the water release strategies, they are also not scientific. Sometimes there is huge amount of water which is released, and sometimes the dams are filled to the brim and water is not released, causing more strain and increasing the chances of failure. There are no mechanisms also in place, standard operating procedures for assessing the lifespan or the performance of the old dams also. These are some of the challenges related to dam safety. Now, what has the government done in this regard? The government came up with the DRIP 2, DRIP 3 schemes, that is the Dam Rehabilitation and Dam Improvement Project. What does it do? This project is to reduce the seepage from the dams, to improve drainage and treating the cracks. That is essentially to improve the life, the safe life of the dam. These are done. And the government also came up with the Dam Safety Act in 2021. What does the act provide for? It says that there should be uniform procedures. For the dams which are having more than 15 meters height, there should be uniform procedures in terms of surveillance, inspection, maintenance, operation, etc. And the Act also provides for a National Committee on Dam Safety. This committee will be helping in evolving and putting in place standard operating procedures, safety policies, etc. And there will be a National Dam Safety Authority also. This National Dam Safety Authority will be responsible for the implementation of the safety policies and the standard procedures. The National Dam Safety Units will also be set up. These dam safety units, they will be responsible for inspecting the dam. For example, if there is an earthquake which comes, or before the monsoon, after monsoon, or during the flooding season, etc., these units inspect the dams. And there are classification of the hazards, the probable hazards which can be there because of the dam safety issues. And the Act also puts in place penal provisions. Now the next article is related to White Revolution 2.0. The context behind it is that milk is the food item that Indians are spending the most upon. Therefore, the production cost for milk should be lowered. This is important in GS3 under the topic Economics of Animal Rearing. Now, first let's discuss the objectives of the earlier Operation Flood. Operation Flood was a brainchild of Dr. Varghese Kurian, and it was initiated to increase the milk production in India to ensure that India becomes self-sufficient in milk. And for this, there were superior breeds of cattle which were promoted for insemination, artificial or natural, and the transport, processing and storage of milk was improved so that there is a production of more milk products and the availability of more processed products made from milk also. For this, the cooperatives were promoted because milk is a perishable item and the role of cooperatives is significant, and therefore the cooperative management practices were put in place which led to the growth of various cooperatives like Amul. Now, the article suggests for White Revolution 2.0 because Indians are now spending more on milk and it is revered as a superfood also. Therefore, it suggests that we can improve breeding technologies now. How? The article suggests that not only natural or artificial insemination, along with it, we can go for sex selective semen also. Now, if we go for sex selective semen, then it will ensure that 90% of the calves that will be born, they will be females, and that will ultimately help in the production of milk, more production during the reproductive cycle of the cattle. The article also suggests embryo transfer. What is embryo transfer? This is the injection of follicle stimulating hormones so that multiple eggs are released in a single cycle in the female cattle. That will again increase the chances of reproduction as well as the increase of milk production. Now, not only the breeding technologies, the article suggests that the feeding cost also has to be lowered because the compound cattle feed, that is costly. Therefore, we can promote the high yielding protein rich fodder grass, the green grass that can be promoted so that the animal feed is improved and along with it the productivity, the milk productivity of the cattle is also improved. Thank you.